Welcome to the Wayback Wayne Show, episode number 4. Today our feature group is
Debbie, this is Kathy. What are you doing tonight? Wow, that sounds cool. Who's playing at the Flame Club? The Dawn 5? I want to go with you. Their singer is so cute. Let's get there early so we have a chance to get in.
That's right. Today we are featuring the very popular 60s band, the Dawn 5. Let's meet the group. Steve Benham, the lead singer and frontman. He was also the middle voice in the group's harmony. As the frontman, he introduced the song. He interacted with the audience. Steve has provided much of the group information from which we have put together this feature. So if you like it, thanks, Steve. If you don't, blame him. I don't care. Thank you, Steve. Steve wrote recently in doing this, as I provide my information for this feature, I find it to be an overwhelming task to do justice to the richness of the experience of being a part of the indie music scene during the mid-60s. Among Steve's many enjoyable experiences were the newspaper articles, performing radio advertisements for their upcoming shows, and even when he appeared on a Vox Amplifier TV commercial. What did you do on that, Steve? Next, we meet Greg Nikoloff, the founder of the Dawn 5, their lead guitar player and backup singer. You know, Greg spent a lot of time putting together the Dawn 5 before he settled on this lineup. He came from a very successful music family with a brother, Mike, who was an accomplished jazz keyboardist, and his father, George, the music director on Channel 6 Jim Gerard Show, and as a consultant in Indianapolis Public Schools on music. Greg was constantly practicing to better himself, and he directed the infusion of new songs into the group's repertoire, including the writing their record, A Necessary Evil, which we'll play later on in the show. On drums, that's my instrument, was the very accomplished Dave McCowan. Dave was also an excellent backup singer, handling the group's high harmonies. He, at North Central, was a member of the very elite Counterpoint Show Choir, and he joined and became the lead role in the school's play of West Side Story. You know, David helped bring the group together in a solid unit. He was firmly dedicated to the goal of the band, and that was becoming a hit group. Connected to the B3 organ, we find Mike Nikoloff. Good old Mike. Mike and I went to school together for a while at Indiana Business College, so I knew Mike fairly well. He was the musical and business leader of the band, in addition to the keyboard player. Vocal practices were always on Monday nights, and full group practices on Thursdays. They were well organized and structured, and they led to a very professional and entertaining show each time the group went on stage. He also had a very likable personality and a good sense of humor. We're going to take a moment and listen to a B-side instrumental written by Mike called Mike's Bag that he wrote for their early record. Providing the band with a dependable foundation for their music was Dave Dunn, the bass player. Dave was the best friend with Mike, and they had performed together for years in Mike's jazz group. Dave was the quiet member. You remember Phil Brandt from the Sounds? He was their quiet member, our quiet member. Now here's Dave Dunn, the quiet member for the Dawn 5. He was always helping, though, to maintain a real steady presence in the group. Behind the scenes, and yet very important to the overall product, were the 3 road managers that the Dawn 5 had. Jim Carr, who was there for a while, and then Jim went to Europe. Dick Fatute, who got very heavily involved, and his family actually all but turned over their house to the band. That's where they socialized and practiced a lot and just did things together in general. In response to Steve's comments, Dick added to the interview that richness of experience comment offered to him a clear difference between the teen activities of the average teenager back then and the band members at the same time. The kids had school events, musical bands, activities, sports, parties, part-time jobs. Kids had all kinds of options to do. As a member of the Dawn 5, your world consisted of business, performing music professionally, and with all the responsibility of providing a quality product to our customers. After all, the kids, that was you back then, you paid to be entertained. And the promoters and agents, they paid, they expected a return. This was always understood by the band. As the road manager, Dick was responsible and performed the behind-scene functions. Logistics and planning were important to him. Those were the days, as Dick writes, when there was no internet, there was no GPS, there were no cell phones. That's real critical. You know what a person's considered without a cell phone, don't you? Handicapped. Even widespread FM radio. We got directions from paper maps and land use phone calls. Kids today might consider us pioneers. The group's manager in the beginning was Bob Grinnell, and later Sandor and Shane of Los Angeles and New York, who sent the Dawn 5 to Nashville to record at RCA Studios with the well-known producer Paul Tannen and Jim Beloy as engineer. Well, they gained an awful lot of recording experience. No recording contract or record resulted. Back to the road they went. The group began by playing small places, parties, high school dances, college sororities and fraternities. Dino Enterprises was booking the group. Almost immediately, the Dawn 5 became so popular, they became one of the elite bands in Indy and the surrounding region. Wherever you found the Dawn 5, you found pop music. Here's an article from the Jewish Community Center advertising that they're coming, and a dance poster from Whiteland Barn. They were all the time opening for headliners. Headliners like Bobby Rydell, the McCoys, the Byrds, Herman and his Hermits, the Turtles, the Hollies, and Tommy James and the Shondells. Check out this picture from the Sherwood Club and the article. Who is that strange guy leaning over that rope? Well, that's George Foreman. The Dawn 5 were part of the fashion craze too during the English invasion. And Ellis Ayres invited them to do a fashion show and to open the Carnaby shop Carnaby, if you remember, was an English type clothing shop. And so anyway, they opened it and did a performance there. Ellis Harris dressed him in real nice white mod suits, gray shirts. It looked really, really sharp. Don't forget they had their Beatle boots on too. And anyway, when the performance was done, a young, really cool-looking dude came up to him and said, "Hey, I really enjoyed you guys. We're going to be working with you tonight." It was one of the Turtles. The group's first road trip, identified by Mike Nikoloff as a really big time. Greg, Steve, Dick, and Jim traveled to Chicago to buy a 12-string guitar. And you may ask why they needed 12 strings when some people said they couldn't play 6. Well, anyway, they needed it. And so they stayed at the 50th on the Lake Hotel on Lakeshore Drive. They felt and acted like men of the world. To quote Mike, once again, a really big time. The group also from time to time suffered from bad hair days. While their hair was not extremely long by any standards, it could still create uncomfortable reactions, especially in truck stops. It was like a red flag through a bull for a certain segment of the population. Where's Mike? Who's playing the organ? Some people said. In 1967, Mike took a break from playing to concentrate on his college studies. Substituting for him that summer was John Casella, who later played for the Chosen Few and then John Mellencamp. Mike returned to the group later that summer and everything went forward. Sadly, John Casella passed away. He is remembered by all who knew him as a great person and extremely talented musician. Louie, please pass the ham. Our road manager parent, Dick writes, Bob and Dorothy had the Kingsmen and the Dawn Five over to their home for a baked ham dinner. It was a great evening and helped develop their long-term friendship with the Kingsmen. The Kingsmen helped the group get signed with their management company, who in addition to the Kingsmen represented Don Rickles, Mr. Warmth, and Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Television's out of ranges, everybody goes through changes, the good society arranges, everybody likes the same. No one living without reason, never recognize the season, close their eyes and hug their knees and lock the door and throw out the keys and don't think, sit still, don't act. God will throw money in the till.
big time managers, Sam Dory and Shane, New York offices, Los Angeles offices. The Dawn Five were on their way. Who yelled, "Yay, yay"? Was it the Beatles? The Shadows of Night? The Who? No, it was Mike Nicholoff. During Dawn 5 performances, when the group played something, Mike would holler out, "Yay, yay," and dance while playing the organ. Their management finally positioned the organ sideways so the audience could see him dance. Yeah. The group's popularity continued to grow. Teen Temple released a 3-page article showing here. You know, some of us who've had children like to see them follow us in music. Steve Benham's son, Mark, has grown into the business. He recorded a CD with several friends entitled Yours and Mine. Let's listen to parts of the 2 songs, Mountain House and Better Than Moses.
The show. Maybe it's cold, honey, at the mountain house in the fall. I could turn around, the route might bring me down. If you need me, I'll be halfway to my fantasies, and I might just see the captain, I suppose.
Well, Liz, I hear you got a couple of interviews for us. Take it away.
I'm here with Dave Dunn of the Dawn 5, and he's going to share some of his life experiences with the Dawn 5 during that time period. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Good, Liz. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, your music exposure, as I understand it, was in jazz. How difficult it was to transition from that to pop music?
Well, as I know Wayne is familiar, I was playing jazz music with Mike Nicholoff for years before I got started with the Dawn 5. So Mike and I pretty much collaborated with that music, and with jazz. There were a couple of styles in jazz. One was the 4-beat measure, or the walking bass line, and one was the 2-beat measure. And in particular, Latin music, which reminded me pretty much of the sound I was going for in rock and roll. So I had a background that allowed me to fit in easily with what we were trying to accomplish.
Interesting. What was the typical audience reaction to your shows when you did them?
Well, I kind of hung back near the drum set and let the girls go crazy for Greg and Steve. And occasionally it would happen. You know, we'd get that near Beatles reaction. That would happen sometimes. And it was fun. It was like, my gosh, I can't believe people are reacting this way, right? So, that was a nice part of it. And playing all the clubs around the city, we got different types of audiences. And if we played their song, you know, the song that they've been listening to for weeks on the hit parade, those were the songs they were gonna go for.
Okay, now you spent almost 3 years in the band. In your own words, what was your experience like?
First, I'm just getting started. The first year was thrilling because it was a whole new idiom and a whole new way of looking at the music. By the time the second year rolled around, we were, we had it in our groove, and it was pretty regular. In the third year and toward the end of the third year, Mike and I had talked, and we both said, this is okay, but would you like to play jazz again? And so we kind of said, yeah, maybe we should think about doing that. And of course, we never got to do that because we crashed the van, and Mike was killed. So that sort of ended the program. And then I tried hanging in with Greg and Steve. Of course, Dave was killed in the accident too. So the three of us tried to make it go, and it did for a while. But I got married and settled down, and sort of got out of the gig, about that time. And so Greg and Steve continued, and of course we had some great sidemen, Pat Finnegan, and we had a lot of different drummers in that third year. But yeah, it was good times. It was really good times, and I moved out to the West Coast in '75, and then I moved up the coast to Olympia, Washington, which is where I live right now. So my music actually, there's not a whole lot of market for instrumental music. So what I'm doing mostly is singing in a church choir and in a community choir. And it's nice to keep my pipes singing a bit and reading some music and stretching my musical chops.
Now, is there anything you'd like to share with us or about the experience as a whole?
Just that, during that time, we were fortunate to meet some really interesting people, go to some interesting places, including New York City and blah, 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 doing all those different things. And it was great. And whenever I got a chance to make music with Mike, whatever it was always a joy for me. Steve Benham, of course, was he was kind of like the cheerleader for the group, and he kept us going. So we did have that going on, and occasionally the Dawn Five would reproduce a song by the Association, for example, that we just nailed, and it was like, wow, we're a pretty good band. Those feelings would come through every now and then. But yeah, it was a good time, and it was fun. I remember playing the Illinois State Fair with Wayne's band, and we take turns on the stage, and we almost got rained out a few times. But there were some good old times in those days.
Well, thank you for spending some time with us, Dave, and doing a few of those memories. It's kind of nice.
Good. It was a pleasure. And thanks for thinking of me and guiding me through the Zoom process.
All right. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Liz Wilson. I'm sitting here with Steve Benham from the Dawn Five, and we're going to go over a few questions about the Dawn Five. How are you, Steve?
I'm fine, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'd like to know what would be a sample song list of the songs you performed in a set.
Well, um, it evolved over time. When we first started, obviously it was right at the height of the British invasion, so a lot of the numbers would be English groups songs. But we generally opened up, it's a funny thing, with Junior Walker and the All Stars Shotgun. And so that was kind of a trademark. We had the Hammond B3, and so that kind of featured that. We didn't have the saxophone, but it was a good thing to get the crowd going. And then we might do something by the Kinks, like You Really Got Me, or All Day and All the Night. And they had a really good song called Till the End of the Day, and that was a big one. We did some there'd be probably at least 2 Beatles songs in a set, and then some of the early Rolling Stones, like 19th Nervous Breakdown, Get Off My Cloud, that kind of thing, and Animals. Some of the early Yardbird stuff, like Shapes of Things to Come and Heart Full of Soul. And then as we do Birds, a lot of Birds. They had 2 albums out at the time, and we did most of the songs from those albums on stage. And let's see, as we moved on, we got into an English group called the Hollies, which featured Graham Nash. And we used to listen. I remember WIFE good guy Jay Reynolds used to call me super hippie. He said, yeah, super hippie always listens to WLS in Chicago, and they would play songs that WIFE didn't play. And things were not, you didn't have all the communication you had like now, where everybody knew everything. So if we play songs that we heard on WLS, the audiences had never heard them before. So we like that a lot. And we concentrated on vocal arrangements, and so anything that had good 3-part harmony, we were all about doing that. But we also wanted to play some music that kids could dance to, because in those days the bands had personalities, and they kind of called them show bands, because we didn't just stand there and play. We would be active. Particularly me being the singer, I would do some dancing, and we talked to the crowd between numbers and that. And so we did the Kingsman stuff, of course, Louie Louie and Money and Little Latin Loopy Loo. And then later on, the Young Rascals came out, and we did all of their stuff. And they were starting to do some R&B, like Midnight Hour, and some of the old soul standards. And then right about that time, I think what they call soul music used to start being played on white stations, and that had not been the case for a long time. You didn't hear any black music on white stations, but then suddenly Sam and Dave and Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin and James Brown were being played everywhere. And so we started doing that sort of thing too. So a set would be 45 minutes and would have usually 13 or 14 songs. And because the songs back then were made for radio, so they were, between 2.5 and 3 minutes long. So the second set, we used to open with the Hollies' I Can't Let Go. And then we do a variety of songs between, and then we would usually end the second set with a medley of Beatles songs that we'd put together, which was, we got a lot of compliments on that particular arrangement. So like that, we did Happenings. They were real hot for a time, doing some old Gershwin standards that they'd updated. And we did Association, Along Comes Mary, and Never My Love, and Cherish, and that kind of thing. Simon and Garfunkel, we did Hazy Shade of Winter and Sounds of Silence and Homeward Bound. some others, but yeah, that's the sort of material that we mostly did.
Okay. Now, which high school did each of your members come from? And did you have a strong fan base from those high schools?
Well, we all went to North Central. Mike Nikoloff and Dave Dunn graduated in '64, and the other three of us graduated in '66. So when we started, and really got rolling in the fall, three of us were sophomores at North Central, and the other two were in college already. And so I would say that we had more following from other high schools than we did from North Central, because the North Central kids, I don't think, ventured much into the other parts of town where the teen clubs were. But I remember kids from Manual and Warren Central, some of those schools were, and then down at Southport High School, that was where we had more following. Though we did play a few dances at North Central High School for big occasions, and those were really fun.
Now, you mentioned some of the instrumentation you used, but as a frontman, you have several photos where you have an instrument. What are all the instruments that you could play?
Well, how well? I played a little rhythm guitar, and especially if Greg would talk us into letting him sing a lead vocal, which he liked to do from time to time. He wasn't a great singer. He was good. He was a good musician, and he could sing the harmony part. But when he sang a lead, it was like, okay, we'll give him this one. But so I would play rhythm guitar sometimes. I played tambourine and I played harmonica. And my first instrument was the trumpet. I started it like in 7th grade and played all through high school, and but never played it in the band.
Okay. Now, do you have anything else you'd like to say about the Dawn Five? What would you like to share?
Well, let's see. It was a wonderful experience. I don't know exactly how the format will go, but the text, our road manager, Dick Fatute, wrote about what he thought was so great to be part of. It was the people only saw the stage performance, but they didn't see what went on behind the scenes. And the idea of starting out on a Friday night for a weekend to play, where you loaded up the van with all the equipment, and you had planned out your route. The contracts were signed, and Mike Nikoloff handled all of that stuff. And so it was this professional enterprise, and to be 17, 18 years old and be a part of something that was so professional, it was really fabulous. I don't think teenagers could have had any more fun doing anything and making that much money, and being a local celebrity and all that. It was pretty great stuff for young people. So I guess that is what I remember, and the camaraderie between the group, the humor that you developed, the jokes you would play on each other, and traveling. There's a picture in the Teen Temple of us stopping at 2 a.m. for a breakfast at some truck stop somewhere. And, we just felt like we were all grown up, and then meeting our idols, which we got to do quite a few times. We opened for the Byrds. And I think back on that and think, here I was sitting with David Crosby and Chris Hillman, just having a conversation like, they were from the same town or something, and they were very nice and very encouraging. The Turtles at Tiger A Go-Go, very encouraging, and they were the ones that first had a PA that later became the standard for everybody. But I think we were the first one to have a PA with speakers and instead of the horns. And being signed by Scandori and Shane from New York and Los Angeles, and getting to know the Kingsmen really, really well. And it was just an amazing time. We had great years of just so much freedom, fun. With Mike as the leader, he demanded professional behavior on and off stage. And so it was just a very good situation. And sometimes in a different town, you might meet a group of girls and they would invite you to their parents' homes, and the parents were welcoming, and girls were pretty. It was just a great time. I can't say it. It was just so wonderful. So.
Well, we've been speaking with Steve Benham from the Dawn 5, and I thank you very much for your time, Steve.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me and making me a part of this project.
Thanks for the interviews, Liz. I hope everybody found that really enjoyable. Thanks, Dave Dunn. Thanks, Steve Benham. Look forward to having you guys on the show again at some point in the future. And now we're going to return to finish up our Dawn 5 story for today. The tragic accident that occurred. The Dawn 5 had purchased a 1950s diesel bus for safety, convenience, and a bit of big time. Meanwhile, while it was getting ready, they traveled to Michigan to perform at a high school prom and would play that next night in Fort Wayne and then return home early on Monday. The prom show went exceptionally well, as Steve Benham says. The Graduate movie made the Simon and Garfunkel music very popular. They closed the evening with a medley of the soundtrack. The last song, Scarborough Fair, brought Dave from behind his drums and Greg playing his acoustic guitar. Kids came up to the stage and just listened to the beautiful song. Steve says it was truly a very special moment. Well, the Dawn 5 loaded up their gear and left for Fort Wayne for the Sunday night gig. Their plan was to arrive early, sleep most of the day, perform, and arrive home early that next morning. Quote Steve Benham, "Unfortunately, an unimaginable tragedy occurred. The state police believe a tire blew on the equipment van, causing the load to shift and resulting in a horrible accident. Mike Nikoloff died at the accident scene. Dave McCowan was injured so badly that he died 4 months later without ever regaining consciousness. Utter devastation to their families and to all of us. After Mike's funeral, Greg, Dave, and Steve agreed that they would try to continue." Well, that's where we're going to stop with the Dawn 5 story today. And which is always the case. Hate to end that kind of a sour note like that, but they did go on. There's more to tell you about them at some point in the future. We'll probably do a follow-up story. So for now, we'll cut that off. We always talk about emails and memoriams. And so we're going to, I believe, do we have a list of them today? Thank you. Okay, emails. Nice job, Wayback Wayne. Didn't know a lot of the bands and geography as I moved here in the 70s and didn't have the money. Oh, I didn't have the money for the music scene. This was great. KT and Carmel. Congrats on another terrific piece of nostalgia. Keep it up. I am waiting for episode 4, David in Tucson. I really enjoyed this. I hope to see more and more. SC in Southern Indiana. from a good longtime friend. Peace and God in Christ. Thanks, Wayne. Old memories, good times, foundational, good work, buddy. In Jesus, John Michael Talbot. You are doing a great job conveying to the audience those days for all the people of our day. I look forward to the next shows, DF in Colorado. And we always mention the memoriams. It's very important to recognize these band members who have gone on to heaven. From the Boys Next Door, Jim Adams and Steve Drybread. From the Sounds Unlimited, Steve Foster. From the Dawn Five, Mike Nikoloff, Greg Nikoloff, and Dave McCowan. From the Idle Few, Ron Bennett, Dan McLean, Rick Webster. From Ronnie and the Rascals, Ron Blackstone. From the Waterproof Candle, Dan Hanley. From the Chosen Few, John Casella. Agents and club operators that have passed on, who contributed to that era. Norm V, Dino Enterprises. Dick Lynn, the Flame Club. Roy Mainers, the House of Sound. Don Holt, the Whiteland Barn. And Bill Trout, the president of Dunwich Records. Well, that ends our show for today. Our next show is going to feature, are you ready for this? Sir Winston and the Commons. That's right, Sir Winston and the Commons. So until then, thanks for tuning us in. Keep sending those emails. Let us know anything you want us to know, and we'll share it with the audience. Have a great one. This is Wayne saying goodbye.